Ahoy hoy and welcome. I'm Sean Fox, this is Made to Ramble, and in this episode we'll be comparing these two head to head. What we have here is the Removu K1, and this little beauty, which I only bought a few days ago, is the DJI OSmo Pocket. So I've been keen to see a comparison between these two for a while now, but as far as I know, this is the first video to do so. In English at least. I haven't had much of a chance before now to play with the OSmo Pocket, so I will be pretty interested to see how the footage compares. Before we get to that though, let's talk about what these two have in common. These are both compact, pocketable camera gimbal combos. Now, while there is a pretty huge difference in size between these two, in comparison to the competition, these are both pretty tiny. Not that there's really a lot of competition around for these. With the exception of the original DJI OSmo, most other gimbals are designed for use with a mobile phone or a GoPro or even a full-size camera. And the original OSmo was significantly larger than both of these, particularly with the phone attached. Definitely would not have fitted in a pocket. Now, while I wouldn't recommend trying to fit this in your front pants pocket, I think you might get a few unfortunate looks and perhaps find yourself banned from hanging around in public spaces. It will fit pretty comfortably in a jacket pocket. The OSmo, of course, is absolutely tiny, and this thing will fit any place you decide to stow it, I guess. Both of these offer 4K video and up to 120 frames per second in 1080p for some nice slow motion footage. You have a variety of frame rate options for both PAL and NTSC. The OSmo Pocket allows you to film at 60 frames per second in 4K though, which is a definite advantage over the K1. That said though, with the Removu there are 60 and 50 frames options at WQHD, which I guess is a little like 2.7K on the GoPro. If you're delivering videos at 1080p like I do, then this still leaves you a little leeway to crop in your videos in post without losing any resolution. So that difference isn't necessarily a deal breaker. Both the K1 and the OSmo Pocket feature a small LCD screen that can be used to help frame your shots, even when you're filming yourself. So these are both great options for vlogging. Now, neither of these screens are exactly stellar, as they're both pretty tiny, but they will get the job done in a pinch. It's probably worth noting that the OSmo Pocket has a touchscreen, which is pretty handy for selecting your focus point, and it works pretty well for navigating the menus as well. The Removu K1 has a pretty good menu layout though, so it's pretty easy to navigate even without the touchscreen. The main thing that you're wanting to make sure of when you're vlogging is that you're in the frame, and for that purpose, both of these screens are perfectly fine. Both cameras have inbuilt mics. I believe that the manufacturers both made a point of promoting the quality of their inbuilt mics for vlogging purposes. But for the Removu K1 there is an expansion or accessory kit that includes a small external mic. Having nice sounding inbuilt microphones is all well and good, but frankly these are pretty useless for most outdoor purposes. It doesn't matter how good the mic is if there's no real way to prevent wind noise. I would much prefer to be able to use an external mic where I can attach a wind muff or a dead cat to help eliminate the wind as much as possible. This is not an issue for the Removu K1 as it has a lovely 3.5mm jack for connecting external mics. We are still waiting on DJI, however, to bring out its promised USB-C dongle, which will allow us to connect an external mic to the OSmo Pocket. They've released a number of accessories for the OSmo Pocket already, but that one we're still waiting on. And personally, I think that should have been the first one released. In the meantime, I've had to rig this up with a bit of a wind muff, which definitely does help, but it's not a perfect solution. Even when the dongle is made available, given the tiny size of this camera, we're not likely to be mounting any large shotgun microphones, but I can see this setup being pretty ideal for something like the Rode SmartLav. I think this will be a really popular vlogging camera. So let's talk about the differences now. The biggest difference between these two, and I suspect the biggest factor in whether you choose to buy one over the other, is going to be field of view. The Removu K1 has a field of view of 101 degrees. That's equivalent to a very wide 17mm lens in full frame terms. This is a pretty good choice for vlogging as the framing isn't too tight, so you're not having to stretch your arms out too far to ensure that you're in the shot. You're not cutting the top of your head off. It also means that you can easily see the environment behind you without there being any background blur. And because the lens is so wide, pretty much everything is in focus from 30 centimeters to infinity, so you're not having to mess around with the focus options. There are no focus options for the Removu K1. It's a fixed focus camera like the GoPro and other action cameras. Of course, the wide angle comes at a cost. Although Removu have done what they can to mitigate the distortion in camera using software, with such a wide field of view, a little distortion is pretty much unavoidable. This can be very apparent when filming yourself, but if you can try and frame your shot so that you're in the center, this can help to minimize the effect. The distortion is always much worse around the edges of your shot. The OSmo Pocket has a much narrower field of view though. Something closer to a 27 or 28mm in full frame terms. Pretty similar to most mobile phones really. It does have an autofocus system as well, which appears to be pretty good, especially since the latest firmware update. It does mean that there will be a little bit of background blur, although with a sensor this small, that won't be significant. You may also find yourself wanting to attach a selfie stick to this just to give yourself a little bit of distance, so you're not quite so close to the camera, and also to allow some of the background to be more visible. There are accessories already available that will allow you to do this. Do keep in mind though that having the camera further away from you will affect the quality of those built-in audio mics. Come on DJI, hurry up and give us our mic jack. Battery life is another issue worth considering. The Removu K1 has a removable, replaceable battery. A really cool battery in fact. I have never before seen a USB port on the battery itself. That is a really clever design. The OSmo Pocket does not have a removable battery, nor is the battery life all that impressive. As I understand it, you'll get a couple of hours use out of a fully charged battery when filming at 1080p and a bit less at 4K. I guess the inbuilt battery might also leave us to wonder how long the device itself will last. Who knows? But also who knows if we might want to upgrade before then anyway. So it might not be that much of an issue. I guess these days most electronic devices are pretty disposable. While the OSmo Pocket allows you access to all of the manual settings, the same cannot be said for the K1. This is pretty much only usable in auto. You can attach a 30mm ND filter backwards to this as a way of slowing down that shutter, but otherwise it's just a matter of turning it on, pointing it at your subject and hoping for the best. So I think that pretty much covers all of the major differences. I figure now we might as well head out and put these two to the test. Which will be the victor? Spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure it'll be this one. Anyway, let's jump on into the car. As I mentioned before, there are a number of accessories already available for the OSmo Pocket. Now, a lot of these are actually third-party accessories. DJI have been pretty slow in releasing their own stuff, while I guess all of the Chinese companies seem to have jumped straight onto it. Anyway, since we're on our way out, I thought that we might as well just try out one of these accessories. This is a window mount for the OSmo Pocket. Now I'm kind of curious about this because I've tried using a GoPro mounted on a gimbal in a similar sort of setup, but whenever I turned a corner, the gimbal would shift, so I couldn't get it to stay pointed directly at me. So now I'm curious to see whether or not the face tracking on the OSmo Pocket will keep the camera pointed at me while we're driving. Only one way to find out. Let's get moving. I gotta admit, so far so good. Okay, so here we are at BRoll's Rapids in the Swan Valley east of Perth. A beautiful place to film some nice scenic B-roll. Now, if you were hoping for some running tests with these two cameras, then I'm afraid you're on the wrong channel. Although I'm sure that both of these can produce relatively smooth footage while running, honestly, how often do you need to run while filming a vlog? Unless you're being chased by a bear, I just can't see why the hell you would bother. And if you are being chased by a bear, why are you worrying about it? Now, of course, those who make short films might occasionally need to film a running shot, but that's not really the focus of this video. And I think if you're filming under controlled conditions like those, there are probably much better options. Anyway, let's check out some footage. This is the Removu K1 with the Rode Video Mic Go. And this is the Removu K1 with just the internal microphone. You can probably hear quite a lot of wind noise, I would imagine. Alright, so this is the teeny tiny DJI OSmo Pocket with just its internal mics, because that's the only choice you have. So 500 people on a rickety little bridge. Well, that seems quite a lot. The Avon descent normally runs through here. I've never actually seen it this dry before. I guess you don't need to be all that observant to notice there's quite a difference in the crop between these two cameras. I have to admit I haven't really done a lot of walking and talking with this, mostly just because I don't really do a lot of walking and talking. I'd much rather locked off static shots for when I'm talking to the camera. Alright, so to my thinking, these cameras are both well suited to vloggers and to those seeking to film B-roll, you know, run and gun style. These are not meant to be action cameras. I can't say that I really understand all of the comparison videos between the GoPro Hero 7 and the Osmo Pocket. They're very different animals. The Osmo is largely intended for getting nice looking cinematic B-roll. It's not just about stabilization, it's the beautiful smooth motion that can be achieved with the use of a gimbal. You can imitate crane shots and sliders, and while you might be able to kind of approximate that with a GoPro, it's a very different aesthetic. Even in linear mode, the GoPro has a look that's very GoPro. It would make more sense to compare the Removu K1 to a GoPro than it does the Osmo Pocket, because at least both of those have such a wide angle. That said, this is just my opinion. I have a couple of GoPros too, and for me it's all about the right tool for the right job, and no one tool is right for every job. So, okay, now that you've had a chance to compare the footage, what are your thoughts? Which of these two cameras do you prefer the footage from? Or maybe you still prefer a GoPro? Let me know in the comments. I'm very interested to hear from everyone. I suspect that there may be a variety of strong opinions here, as the Osmo Pocket certainly seems to have been pretty divisive immediately from the day that it was first announced. Alright, so my next video will be a what's in my camera bag video, as I'm packing my gear up ready for a 6-week vacation in South America and Antarctica. This is a trip that we've been planning for a while now, so I've had quite a time to consider what I'll need to take with me. I'll be filming and photographing everything from landscapes to street scenes, and quite a lot of wildlife too. We'll be in the tropics as well as the Antarctic and everywhere in between. So this will be an interesting holiday indeed. So keep an eye out for that video anyway, and in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, hit the bell icon to get notified about future videos, check out our website at made2ramble.com, and I'll see you again soon.